A mother watches her children eat the last piece of bread, while secretly drinking water just to silence her own hunger. Tonight she has to decide: steal food or watch her Bobby sleep hungry again. Sarah sat quietly in the corner of the dark alley, pulling the thin blanket tighter around her two sleeping children as the cold night air pushed through the narrow walls beside them. The city around them never truly slept. Cars continued rushing through wet streets, distant sirens echoed between buildings, and footsteps passed nearby without ever slowing down. Nobody noticed the exhausted mother sitting on the concrete with her children curled against her chest. Liam's small stomach growled softly in his sleep. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment after hearing it. That sound hurt her more than the cold. She gently brushed her fingers through his messy hair and forced herself to smile, even though nobody could see it. Mothers learned how to smile even when their hearts were breaking. It became part of survival. Beside him, little Ava hugged her old stuffed rabbit tightly. One button eye was missing, and the fur had become rough from years of love, but Ava treated it like treasure. Sarah looked at her daughter's pale face and slowly kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry," she whispered so softly the wind almost carried the words away. Earlier that evening, Sarah had managed to get 2 slices of pizza from a shelter volunteer, handing out leftover food near the subway station. 2 slices for 3 people. She had already decided before taking the box that she would not eat. Mothers always decided that first. Liam had noticed immediately. "What about you, Mom?" Sarah opened the pizza box and tore 1 slice into 2 smaller pieces for the children. "I ate before we came here," she lied smoothly. Liam stared at her carefully. At 7 years old, he was beginning to notice things children should never have to notice. "You always say that." Sarah laughed softly, pretending not to understand. "Because it's true, silly." But Liam kept watching her. He noticed how her hands trembled sometimes, how she drank water slowly to fill her stomach, how she looked away whenever food appeared. Children notice suffering long before adults realize it. "You can have mine," Liam whispered, holding out the last bite. Sarah felt her chest tighten painfully. "No, baby." "But you're hungry." She swallowed hard. "No, I'm not." Another lie. Maybe the 100th one that month. Liam slowly ate the final bite while Sarah looked toward the streetlights, blinking back tears before he could see them forming. After the children fell asleep, Sarah leaned her head against the cold brick wall behind her and closed her eyes. Hunger moved through her body like a slow ache now. She had almost gotten used to it. Almost. The first days without food had been torture. Now it felt different. Like weakness sinking into her bones. Like dizziness every time she stood up too quickly. Like exhaustion that never truly disappeared. But none of that mattered as long as Liam and Ava ate something. That was the rule she lived by. If there was food for one person, it belonged to the children. If there was a warm jacket, the children wore it. If there was a safe place to sleep, the children slept first. Sarah could survive discomfort. She could survive hunger. What she could not survive was watching her children suffer. A cold breeze swept through the alley, making Liam shiver in his sleep. Without hesitation, Sarah removed her own jacket and gently covered him with it. Instantly, the freezing air wrapped around her thin sweater. Her arms trembled from the cold, but she ignored it. Mothers always ignored themselves. She looked down at her children again and remembered how different life once looked. There had been bedtime stories, warm baths, school lunches packed in colorful bags, movie nights on the couch. Back then, Liam used to complain if his chicken nuggets touched the vegetables on his plate. Now he thanked people for stale bread. The memory nearly destroyed her. Sarah remembered the small apartment they used to have. It wasn't fancy, but it had sunlight through the kitchen window every morning. Ava used to dance barefoot across the living room while music played from Sarah's old radio. Life had felt normal then. Safe. Predictable. And Sarah had believed hard work would always protect her family. She had believed if you stayed honest and worked hard enough, things would somehow work out. Then Daniel left. One ordinary Tuesday morning, he kissed the children goodbye, said he was going to work, and never came back. At first Sarah thought something terrible had happened. She called hospitals, police stations, friends. Nobody knew anything. 3 days later, she found the note. "I can't do this anymore." That was all it said. No explanation. No apology. Just abandonment folded onto the kitchen table. The bills started drowning her immediately after that. Rent, electricity, medicine for Ava's asthma. Sarah worked double shifts at the diner, sleeping barely 4 hours each night while trying to keep life together for the children. Then Ava got sick during winter. Very sick. Sarah missed work to stay at the hospital with her daughter. When she finally returned, her manager wouldn't even look her in the eyes. "I had to replace you." Just like that, everything collapsed. No savings. No family nearby. No safety net. Only fear. The eviction notice came 2 months later. Sarah still remembered Liam asking innocent questions while movers carried their things away. "Where are we going now, Mom?" She didn't have an answer then. Sometimes she still didn't. A loud noise nearby pulled Sarah back to the present. She immediately wrapped both arms around her children protectively. 2 men walked past the alley arguing loudly before disappearing into the street. Sarah's heart continued pounding even after they were gone. Every night outside felt dangerous. She barely slept anymore. Not because she wasn't tired. Because mothers on the streets couldn't afford deep sleep. She stayed alert constantly. Listening. Watching. Protecting. If the children coughed, she woke instantly. If footsteps came too close, her body tensed immediately. Fear became part of her nervous system. Yet somehow, every morning when Liam and Ava opened their eyes, Sarah still found the strength to smile at them. "Good morning, Bobbies." As if everything would somehow be okay. As if she believed it herself. The next morning, Sarah walked through downtown carrying Ava while Liam held onto her hand tightly. Her stomach burned from emptiness, but she ignored it the same way she ignored the pain in her feet and the dizziness in her head. They stopped outside a small convenience store where warm breakfast sandwiches rotated behind the glass window. Ava stared quietly. "They smell good." Sarah nodded gently. "Yeah, they do." Liam looked up at her. "Are we eating today?" The question hit harder than any insult ever could. Sarah crouched beside him and fixed his hood carefully. "Of course we are." She had no idea how. But mothers learned to speak hope even when they felt none inside themselves. As they continued walking, Sarah secretly searched trash cans near restaurants for anything untouched. Sometimes people threw away entire meals after only a few bites. At first, the shame nearly killed her. Now survival mattered more than pride. Finally, behind a cafe, Sarah found half a sandwich still wrapped inside a clean napkin. Relief flooded through her instantly. She split it carefully between Liam and Ava while pretending she wasn't hungry. "You should eat too," Ava said innocently, offering her tiny piece. Sarah smiled warmly and kissed her daughter's hand. "I already had breakfast earlier." Another lie. But mothers became experts at lying when the truth could hurt their children. And as Sarah watched Liam and Ava eat the tiny pieces slowly, trying to make them last longer, One painful thought kept repeating inside her heart again and again. As long as they eat, I can survive. 2 years earlier, Sarah Mitchell's life looked painfully ordinary in the best possible way. Every morning began with the sound of cartoons playing in the living room while coffee brewed in the kitchen. Liam would run through the apartment wearing mismatched socks, pretending to be a superhero before school, while little Ava sat on the floor feeding crackers to her stuffed rabbit like it was a real pet. The apartment was small. The wallpaper near the kitchen sink peeled slightly at the corners, and the heater sometimes made strange noises during winter nights. But to Sarah, it felt like safety. It felt like home. Most importantly, it felt stable. Sarah worked 6 days a week at a neighborhood diner downtown. The pay wasn't amazing, but the regular customers knew her by name, and the tips were usually enough to cover groceries and school supplies. Every Friday night, Sarah brought leftover pie slices home for the children. Liam loved chocolate cream pie. Ava always chose apple. Those little routines mattered more than money ever could. Back then, Sarah believed stability was permanent. She believed if you worked hard, stayed honest, and loved your family enough, life would eventually reward you with peace. She had no idea how fragile peace really was. One Tuesday morning changed everything. Daniel stood near the apartment door adjusting his tie while scrolling through his phone. Sarah barely looked up from packing Liam's lunch. "Can you pick up milk after work?" she asked casually. Daniel shrugged. "Yeah." Ava waddled toward him in pink pajamas, raising her tiny arms. "Daddy hug." Daniel picked her up for only a second before placing her back down. "Bye, kiddo." Then he walked out the door. Sarah didn't know that would be the last time her children saw their father. At first, she thought he was working late. Then she thought maybe his phone battery died. By midnight, panic started settling into her chest. She called repeatedly. No answer. The next morning, his closet was half empty. 3 days later, Sarah found the note folded on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No goodbye to the children. Just one sentence that shattered an entire family. Sarah sat on the kitchen floor staring at the note, while Ava cried for cereal and Liam asked when Dad was coming home. She didn't know how to answer. How do you explain abandonment to children who still believe parents are superheroes? For weeks, Sarah kept pretending Daniel might come back. She told Liam maybe Daddy was traveling for work. Maybe his phone was broken. Maybe something unexpected happened. But children slowly notice the truth hidden between adult silence. One night Liam quietly asked, "Did Dad leave us?" Sarah felt her heart break hearing those words from a 7-year-old boy. She hugged him tightly. "No matter what happens," she whispered, "you still have me." And she meant it with every part of herself. After Daniel disappeared, bills began piling up instantly. Rent, electricity, internet, car payments, school expenses. Sarah suddenly realized Daniel had left behind more debt than money. Every paycheck disappeared the moment it arrived. Still, she fought to keep life normal for the children. She picked up extra shifts at the diner. Sometimes double shifts. Sometimes triples. She came home exhausted, feet swollen and eyes heavy, but still helped Liam with homework before bed. Still read stories to Ava. Still smiled. Mothers learn how to suffer quietly. Then winter arrived, and with it came Ava's asthma attacks. One freezing night, Ava struggled to breathe so badly Sarah rushed her to the emergency room at 2 in the morning. The hospital admitted her immediately. Sarah stayed beside her daughter's bed for 3 straight days. 3 days away from work. 3 days without income. 3 days that cost her everything. When Sarah finally returned to the diner, her manager avoided eye contact. "I'm sorry," he muttered awkwardly. Sarah immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" He sighed heavily. "I had to hire someone else." Her stomach dropped. "You fired me. You missed too many shifts." "My daughter was in the hospital." "I know." The coldness of that answer stunned her. Years of loyalty disappeared in one conversation. Sarah begged for another chance. Any shift. Any hours. But the decision was already made. She walked out carrying her final paycheck, while snow fell softly around the parking lot. For the first time in years, fear truly entered her life. She applied everywhere after that. Grocery stores, coffee shops, retail stores, cleaning services. Nobody called back. Some places were overstaffed. Others wanted younger workers. A few simply ignored her completely. Meanwhile, the bills kept growing. Sarah started skipping meals to make groceries last longer for the children. Then came the overdue rent notices taped onto the apartment door. Bright red letters. Final warning. She tried negotiating with the landlord. "Please," she begged, "I just need more time." But landlords don't accept desperation as payment. The eviction happened on a rainy afternoon. Liam stood beside the couch clutching his backpack, while strangers carried their furniture away piece by piece. Ava cried when movers took her little pink bed. "That's mine." Sarah held her tightly while trying not to fall apart herself. Neighbors peeked through curtains watching silently. Nobody helped. Nobody spoke. The humiliation burned inside Sarah worse than the rain soaking through her clothes. Then Liam asked the question she dreaded most. "Where are we gonna live now?" Sarah looked around helplessly. At the boxes. At the soaked sidewalk. At the children staring at her for answers. And for the first time in her life, she didn't have one. The shelter became their next stop. Tiny crowded rooms filled with exhausted families. Crying bobbies. Arguments during the night. People carrying entire lives inside garbage bags. Sarah tried making it feel temporary for the children. "Just an adventure," she told them. But shelters have rules. Strict rules. Some nights there weren't enough beds. Other nights fights broke out. One evening Liam whispered, "I miss home." Sarah nearly broke hearing it. Because she missed it too. She missed normal problems. Normal stress. Normal life. She missed worrying about grocery prices instead of survival. Weeks turned into months. Eventually, even the shelters became inconsistent. Sometimes they slept in waiting rooms. Sometimes inside subway stations. Sometimes in alleys behind buildings where security guards wouldn't chase them away. Every day became a battle just to survive until the next one. And the hardest part wasn't hunger. It wasn't cold. It wasn't exhaustion. It was watching the children slowly adapt to homelessness as if it were normal. Liam stopped asking for toys. Stopped asking for birthday parties. Stopped asking for things children should ask for. Instead, he asked questions no child should ever need to ask. Is this a safe place to sleep? Do we have enough food for tomorrow? Will someone kick us out again? Sarah hated hearing survival inside his voice. One afternoon, while sitting near a bus station, Ava pointed toward a family entering a restaurant together. "Remember restaurants?" she asked innocently. Sarah forced a smile. "Yeah, baby." Ava tilted her head. "Were we rich before?" The question destroyed her. Because to her children, basic stability now looked like wealth. A warm meal. A bed, a bathroom, safety. Things Sarah once took for granted had become distant memories. That night, after the children fell asleep beneath a thin blanket near the alley wall, Sarah stayed awake staring at the city lights beyond the street. People continued living normal lives around her. Laughing inside restaurants, shopping, driving home, complaining about ordinary things. None of them realizing how quickly everything could disappear. How one job loss, one illness, one unexpected tragedy could turn stability into survival almost overnight. And as Sarah listened to her children breathing softly beside her, one terrifying realization settled heavily into her chest. The life she once believed was permanent had vanished so fast it almost felt like it never existed at all. Sarah had always believed she was a good person. Not perfect, not lucky, but honest. She never stole, never cheated, never hurt anyone intentionally. So when she first started struggling after losing her job, she kept repeating the same belief to herself like a shield. Good people don't become bad people. Good people don't cross lines. Good people endure. At first, endurance worked. She skipped meals so Liam and Ava could eat. She told herself hunger was temporary. She drank water when her stomach growled. She smiled through dizziness. She even laughed softly when Liam joked about being super hungry like a superhero. But hunger has a way of changing time. One day feels manageable. Then another. Then another. And slowly, what felt temporary begins to reshape reality. Sarah started noticing small changes inside herself. At first, it was just thoughts. She began staring longer at food when she saw it. She started calculating prices without meaning to. She memorized which trash bins behind restaurants were emptied less frequently. She noticed which cafes threw away sandwiches untouched at closing time. Not because she wanted to steal, but because her mind was learning survival faster than her pride could resist it. Then came the physical changes. Her hands shook more often. Her head felt light when she stood too quickly. Her stomach burned constantly, not just with hunger, but with a strange emptiness that made even water feel insufficient. Still, she refused to take food from her children. That rule never changed. If there was food, it belonged to them. But rules begin to bend when the body becomes weaker than the will. One evening, after walking nearly 10 kilometers searching for work, Sarah and the children sat outside a small convenience store. A promotion sign flickered inside. Fresh sandwiches, buy one get one free. Ava pressed her face against the glass. "Mommy, that looks warm." Sarah nodded slowly. "It is warm." Liam looked up at her. "Can we get one?" Sarah checked her pockets. There was just enough for one. One sandwich. For 3 people. Her mind immediately split into calculations. If she bought it and split it evenly, none of them would feel full. If she gave it to the children entirely, she would go another day without eating. Another day might be fine. Or it might not. She hesitated too long. A man behind the counter noticed her standing there and slowly turned away, pretending not to watch. That small moment of awareness made Sarah step back. She didn't go inside. Instead, she smiled at the children. "Let's find something better later." Liam didn't argue. He had learned not to ask too many questions. That night, Sarah watched them sleep and felt a strange emptiness inside her chest. Not just hunger. Something heavier. Something that felt like shrinking. Like disappearing slowly while still being awake. Days passed. Then weeks. Food became less frequent. Shelter meals were unpredictable. Sometimes they arrived late. Sometimes not at all. Sometimes there were lines too long for tired children to stand in. Sarah began giving up her portion without hesitation. At first it felt noble. Then it became automatic. Then it became necessary. Because her body no longer protested as loudly. One morning, Liam noticed. He watched Sarah drink only water while he ate a small bowl of porridge. "You didn't eat anything," he said quietly. Sarah smiled gently. "I'm not hungry right now." Liam frowned. "You said that yesterday too." Sarah paused. Children remember patterns adults hope they won't notice. Ava, too young to fully understand, still noticed something was wrong. She would sometimes touch Sarah's face and say, "Mommy looks tired all the time." Sarah would laugh it off. "I'm just busy taking care of you too." But inside, something was breaking slowly. Because hunger doesn't only take food. It takes clarity. It takes patience. It takes emotional strength. And eventually, it takes moral certainty. One afternoon, Sarah stood behind a bakery window watching fresh bread being placed on trays. The smell alone made her vision blur slightly. Warm air, butter, sugar, everything her children hadn't had in days. Her hands instinctively moved closer to the door. Then stopped. She stepped back immediately. Not because she didn't want it, but because she still believed there was a line she couldn't cross. But hunger doesn't disappear when morality appears. It waits. It grows. It whispers. That night, as they sat in an abandoned corner behind a building, Liam asked a question that stayed in her mind longer than anything else. "Mom, why do rich people always eat while we do?" Sarah looked at him carefully. He wasn't angry. Just curious. Just observing the world like a child, trying to understand unfairness too early. She struggled to answer. Because the truth wasn't simple. Life isn't distributed fairly. But telling that to a child doesn't help them sleep. So she said softly, "Sometimes people are just lucky." Liam nodded slowly. "Are we unlucky?" That question stayed in the air for a long time. Sarah wanted to say no. Wanted to say things would get better. Wanted to promise safety. But she had already broken too many invisible promises just by surviving. So she only said, "We're together." That night, after the children fell asleep, Sarah leaned against the wall and felt something shift inside her. Not a decision. Not yet. But pressure. Growing pressure. Because somewhere deep inside her mind, a dangerous thought had begun forming. A thought she had always judged in others. A thought she had once believed only bad people had. What if survival justified everything? She immediately rejected it at first. Shook her head. Closed her eyes tightly. But hunger doesn't respect rejection. It returns. It repeats. It stays. Days later, she found herself standing outside a small grocery store holding a nearly empty bag, watching people walk in and out carrying food without thinking. Bread, milk, fruit, warm meals. Things her children needed. Things she couldn't give. Her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her bag. Her breathing became uneven. A line formed behind her in her mind that she had never crossed before. And she realized something terrifying. Desperation doesn't ask permission before changing a person. It simply waits until they are too tired to resist anymore. The bakery smelled like warmth the moment Sarah stepped inside. Fresh bread, butter, sugar, and something almost painful in its comfort filled the air and made her stomach tighten instantly. For a moment she forgot the sound of traffic outside, the cold biting her skin, and the exhaustion that had been following her for weeks without mercy. Liam held her hand tightly. Ava leaned into her side, half asleep, her small fingers gripping Sarah's sleeve. Sarah stood near the entrance longer than she should have. Her eyes moved across the shelves slowly, almost afraid of what she was seeing. Croissants, rolls, sandwiches wrapped neatly in paper, everything clean, everything untouched, everything so normal that it felt like another world. A world she used to belong to. The bakery owner was behind the counter, wiping his hands with a cloth. He noticed them immediately, not in a judgmental way, but in a way that was observant, calm, and strangely patient, like he had seen many stories walk through his door before. Sarah tried to steady her breathing. She hadn't planned this moment properly. She didn't even know when the thought of stealing had turned into action. It had started earlier that day when Ava's cough returned, dry, weak, the kind that made Sarah's heart race every time she heard it. Liam had said he wasn't hungry again, which meant he was hungry but trying not to say it, and Sarah herself had not eaten properly in almost 2 days. Her body was starting to feel distant, like it belonged to someone else. So when she saw the bread inside the bakery window earlier, something inside her broke quietly instead of loudly. Now standing inside, she felt that broken part pulling her forward. Sarah slowly walked deeper into the shop. Each step felt heavier than the last. Liam whispered, "Mommy, can we really go in?" She nodded quickly without looking at him. "Yes, just stay close." Her voice sounded different even to her own ears. She moved toward the counter, pretending to look around, but her eyes kept returning to a single loaf placed near the edge. Fresh, golden, still warm, the kind of bread that would make 2 hungry children stop crying for at least one night. Only one loaf. That was all she kept thinking. One loaf could silence hunger for a few hours. One loaf could make her children sleep without empty stomachs. One loaf was nothing for this bakery, but everything for her. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped closer. The bakery owner watched her now, no longer pretending not to notice. His eyes followed her movements carefully, not accusing, just observing. Sarah avoided eye contact. She leaned slightly toward the shelf. Her fingers hovered near the bread. Ava shifted in her arms, murmuring softly in sleep. That tiny sound broke something in her again. Sarah quickly grabbed the loaf and pulled it under her coat. It was almost automatic. Not planned. Not dramatic. Just survival moving faster than thought. For a second, everything froze inside her. Her breath stopped. Her mind went blank. Then she turned toward the exit, holding her children tighter, ready to leave as quickly as possible. But a voice stopped her. Not loud. Not angry. Just steady. "Ma'am." Sarah froze completely. Her body stiffened so hard she felt pain in her shoulders. Liam looked up at her instantly. Ava stirred slightly. The bakery felt suddenly too quiet. Sarah slowly turned her head. The owner was walking toward her from behind the counter. Every step he took made her heart beat louder. She tried to speak. I can explain." Her voice cracked. She hated how weak it sounded. The man stopped a few steps away. He didn't touch her. Didn't call anyone. Didn't raise his voice. Instead, he looked at the children first. Then at Sarah. Then at the coat where the bread was hidden. The silence stretched painfully. Sarah felt her entire life collapsing in that moment. All the nights of sacrifice. All the lies to her children. All the dignity she had tried to protect. Everything seemed to be ending in one small bakery. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please, I'm sorry." Liam tightened his grip on her hand. "I didn't mean, they haven't eaten." Her words broke apart. She couldn't finish them. The bakery owner didn't interrupt. He just watched her carefully, as if trying to understand something deeper than the action itself. Then he spoke quietly. "Put it on the counter." Sarah hesitated. Her hands trembled. Slowly, she removed the bread from under her coat. She placed it on the counter like it weighed more than her entire body. Her head lowered immediately. She couldn't look at anyone. People inside the bakery were watching now. Whispers started quietly, judgment forming in the air like smoke. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with shame. Not because she got caught, but because her children were seeing it. That was the worst part. Liam looked confused. Ava was now fully awake, holding onto Sarah tightly. Sarah whispered, it's okay," even though nothing felt okay. The bakery owner walked closer to the counter and looked at the bread she had tried to take. Then he asked a question that didn't match the situation at all. "When did you last eat?" Sarah blinked in confusion. "What?" He repeated it slowly. "When did you last eat properly?" The question hit her harder than any accusation ever could. Her lips parted slightly. She tried to answer immediately, but nothing came out. Her mind searched for a moment. Yesterday. 2 days ago. She couldn't remember. And that realization terrified her more than getting caught. Because forgetting something so basic meant something inside her life had already collapsed completely. I don't know," she finally whispered. The bakery owner nodded slowly, like he already understood. Then he turned away and walked into the kitchen. Sarah's heart pounded. She thought he had gone to call the police. She braced herself. She held her children tighter. She prepared for humiliation, for consequences, for everything she feared. A few moments passed that felt endless. Then the owner returned. But this time he was carrying something. Not anger. Not punishment. Food. 3 bowls of hot soup. Fresh sandwiches wrapped neatly. A bottle of milk. And a large bag filled with bread. Sarah stared at him, completely unable to move. He placed everything gently on the counter. Then said, "Sit." 1 word. Simple. Heavy. Sarah shook her head immediately. "I can't pay for this. I didn't ask you to." Her eyes filled again. "I tried to steal from you." "I know." The calmness in his voice made her break down even more. Why are you doing this?" The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he rolled up his sleeve. A faded memory tattoo was visible on his arm. He spoke softly. "My mother once stole bread from me too." Sarah froze. He continued. "She was caught when I was a child. A stranger helped her instead of punishing her." He looked at the children again. "Because of that, I got to grow up." His voice lowered. "And I decided that one day I would do the same for someone else." Sarah couldn't speak. Her hands covered her mouth as tears fell silently. Liam looked at the food, then at his mother, confused but hopeful. Ava reached toward the milk instinctively. The bakery owner gently pushed the food closer. "Eat," he said softly. Sarah hesitated for only a second longer before collapsing into the chair he placed nearby. Liam and Ava started eating slowly at first, then faster as hunger finally caught up to them. Sarah watched them without eating herself, just crying quietly, overwhelmed by something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Safety, kindness, relief. And for the first time in a long time, she did not feel alone in the world. A year passed in a way that Sarah still couldn't fully explain. Not quickly, not magically, but slowly, like sunlight returning after a long winter that refused to end. The bakery owner kept his word. Sarah started working early mornings before the shop opened. At first it was simple tasks: wiping tables, arranging chairs, cleaning the front glass that always fogged up from the smell of fresh bread inside. Her hands were still weak in the beginning, her body still carrying the memory of hunger like an old injury, but she showed up every day even when her legs shook from exhaustion. Because now she had something she didn't have before. A reason that didn't feel like survival. It felt like rebuilding. Liam and Ava were placed in a small rented room above a community shelter nearby, arranged quietly by the bakery owner through connections Sarah didn't even understand. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't perfect. But it had beds. It had a door that locked. It had warmth during cold nights. And most importantly, it had safety. The first night there, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept checking on the children every few minutes, afraid the comfort would disappear if she looked away too long. Liam noticed. "Mom, we're not outside anymore," he said softly, half asleep. Sarah smiled faintly. "I know." Ava rolled over in her small bed and whispered, "It's warm." That single word almost broke Sarah again. Warm was something she had stopped expecting from life. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Sarah learned quickly at the bakery. She started with cleaning, then moved to preparing dough trays, then learned how to shape bread under the baker's supervision. The work was early and tiring, but it had a rhythm that felt grounding. The smell of fresh bread no longer hurt her stomach the way it once did. Instead, it reminded her that life could still be gentle. The bakery owner never treated her like a charity case. He corrected her mistakes. He gave her responsibilities. He trusted her with small decisions. And slowly, Sarah began trusting herself again. Liam went back to school. The first day, he wore a slightly oversized uniform, holding Sarah's hand a little longer than usual before entering the gate. "Are you coming back?" he asked nervously. "Always," she answered. And she meant it. Ava started drawing again, little messy pictures of houses, suns, and sometimes a bakery with too many windows and smiling people inside. Sarah kept every drawing carefully in a small box. But healing was not smooth. Some nights, Sarah still woke up panicking, thinking she had forgotten to feed the children. Sometimes she still felt guilty eating her own meal, even when there was enough for everyone. Survival habits don't disappear easily. They fade slowly like echoes. One evening after closing the bakery, the owner called Sarah to the back room. He placed an envelope on the table. "This is for you," he said. Sarah frowned slightly. "What is it?" "Open it." Her fingers hesitated before tearing it open. Inside was a photograph. It was old, slightly faded. It showed a young boy standing beside a woman outside a small roadside stall. The woman was holding bread, her clothes worn, her face tired but smiling faintly. Sarah looked closer. Then she realized something. The boy in the picture was the bakery owner. And the woman was his mother. She looked up slowly, confused. He spoke before she could ask. "She used to be like you." Sarah's breath caught. He continued quietly. "We were homeless for a short time. She did what she had to do to feed me." He paused. "One day, someone chose kindness instead of punishment." He tapped the photo gently. "That moment changed both of our lives." Sarah looked down at the picture again, her hands trembling slightly. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't need to," he replied. The room fell silent. Outside, the bakery was closing. The sound of chairs stacking and doors locking echoed softly. Then he slid another paper toward her. A formal document. Sarah blinked. "What is this?" A small share, he said calmly. This bakery is growing. I want you to be part of it. Sarah shook her head immediately. I can't accept this. You already did the hard part, he said. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? You survived, he answered simply. That sentence hit her deeper than anything else. Because surviving had never felt like an achievement to her before. Only exhaustion. Only necessity. Only pain. But now someone was telling her it mattered. Her eyes filled with tears again. But this time she didn't wipe them away. Months later, Sarah stood behind the counter not as a cleaner anymore, but as a full member of the bakery team. She served customers, trained new workers, and sometimes helped design new menu items. Liam would sometimes visit after school, sitting quietly in a corner doing homework while waiting for her shift to end. Ava would run inside laughing, already known by the staff who treated her like family. The bakery had become more than a workplace. It had become a second chance for everyone inside it. One rainy evening, Sarah noticed something outside the bakery window. A woman standing in the cold. Two small children beside her. They were not asking loudly. They were just waiting silently, like Sarah once had. The woman looked exhausted, hesitant, lost. Sarah stood still for a moment. For a brief second, she saw her own past standing in front of her. The bakery owner noticed her silence. She's been there for a while, he said gently. Sarah nodded slowly. I know. Then she walked to the back, prepared 3 warm meals, packed them carefully, and stepped outside into the rain. The woman looked startled when Sarah approached. I'm sorry, she began quickly. I'm not asking for. Sarah shook her head gently. I know. She placed the food into her hands. The woman froze. Sarah gave a small, tired smile. It's okay. The woman broke down crying instantly. Sarah didn't rush her. She didn't ask questions. She just stood there quietly holding an umbrella over them, the same way someone once stood over her without judgment. Liam watched from inside the bakery window. Ava held his hand. Is that Mommy? She asked softly. Liam nodded. Yes. Inside Sarah, something finally settled. Not pain. Not fear. But understanding. Life had brought her full circle. From desperation to kindness. From hunger to healing. From receiving help to becoming the help someone else needed. And in that quiet moment, standing in the rain with strangers she had just met, Sarah understood something that stayed with her forever. Sometimes the people who suffer the most are not broken by their pain. They are rebuilt by the kindness they receive, and later become the reason someone else survives. Moral: never underestimate a small act of kindness, because it may not just save a moment, it may rebuild an entire life and continue that chain of hope long after you are gone. Emotional story disclaimer. This story is fictional and created for emotional storytelling and inspirational purposes. While the characters and events are imagined, the struggles shown in this video reflect real hardships faced by many families around the world. The intention is to spread awareness, empathy, hope, and kindness toward people facing difficult situations.